about marriage that is not true. Hi friends, welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. Today's video will be talking about the common myths about marriage which is not quite true. Most of you feel that your married life will have a traditional pattern and design, and that everything in your relationship will happen according to how marriage was designed to be. But sadly, your belief that your married life will follow its traditional outlook does not really happen. It is a blunt truth that you believe the many traditional theories that has been said about married life. As a normal human being, you have many expectations about your marriage. You dreamily believe that all your expectations about your spouse will become a reality after your marriage. You may be ultra modern in your outlook, but your beliefs about your married life is often traditional. You dreamily want love, care, mutual respect, loyalty and lifelong togetherness to be inbuilt into your married life. In your idealistic dreams about your spouse, you assume that everything will be perfect in your married life. But your expectations about your spouse have such a short lifespan that you're taken aback when one myth after another crumbles to dust just a few years after your marriage. Many of your dreams about your married life never really happens in reality. When your beliefs about your married life is battered by the realities that happen to you, you're emotionally destroyed. What are the common myths about marriage that never really happens to you? The number one common myth that does not happen in your marriage is your belief that your love will always be intense. As your love for your spouse is at its peak during your dating days, you blindly believe that your love for each other will not lose its intensity. Before your marriage, you're emotional about your spouse and feel that he or she is a perfect match to you. You vow to yourself that you'll always cherish and treasure your spouse as the most precious thing that happened to you. You also dreamily assume that your spouse will always make you feel loved and cared. You long for your wedding day to dawn as you do not want to be away from your spouse even for a moment. You lovingly feel that there's nothing in your life except your spouse. What you do not realize is that all your dreams about your life with your spouse will eventually turn out to be a pipe dream. The topmost myth about your married life that gets destroyed is that your love for your spouse would not lose its intensity. You're taken aback when your love for each other so loses its sheen and glow. Your great expectation that your love for your spouse would always be massive and intense slowly becomes unreal and illusionary. During your love days, you had so much to talk about. You had many things to appreciate about your spouse. You could not have enough of each other and so talked and talked for hours together. But after your marriage, nothing of your dreams happens in reality. Your dream that your marriage would be perfect remain a dream forever. It is because the reality of your married life is entirely different from what you dreamed of. Your relationship with your spouse is not as perfect as you assumed it to be. In fact, you find your relationship with your spouse very problematic and nerve-wracking to you. You're also taken aback when your spouse has many negative qualities. The negative qualities of your spouse make you feel cheated by him or her. You feel emotionally crushed when your belief that your love would forever retain its intensity never happens. The number two common myth that never happens in your marriage is your belief that you will not fight with your spouse about money. Before your marriage, you thought your love was more important than anything else in this world. You feel couples who fight about money are being silly and loveless. You're confirmed that you will not fight with your spouse about money. But after your marriage, you're amazed by the power money wields in your married life. You're taken aback when your interaction with your spouse is almost always about money. Many a time you argue with your spouse about money. You're also taken aback when his way of spending money is entirely different from that of your spouse. Fights regarding allocation of money for your family's mutual financial commitments become a daily occurrence between you. Before your marriage, you never for once thought that money would be an issue between you and your spouse. But after marriage, money becomes the topmost reason you fight and argue with your spouse. Your belief that money will not create problems between you crumbles to nothingness. The number three common myth that never happens in your marriage is your thought of being supportive towards your spouse. Before your marriage, you're so overwhelmingly in love with your spouse that you are always protective towards him or her. So, you make a vow to yourself that you'll always support your spouse even after your marriage. Strangely, after your marriage, you do not lend emotional support to your spouse. Though you see your spouse looking distressed and tense, you ignore it as you feel it does not concern you in any way. When your spouse wants to share his or her apprehensions with you, you feel bored to listen to it as you feel he or she is making much ado about nothing. As you're totally concentrated on your own work-related problems and other family issues, you're not concerned about the problems your spouse faces. Can you see that the myth that you'll always support your spouse gathers dust after your marriage? The number 4 common myth that never happens in your marriage is your promise of treating your in-laws as your own parents. Before marriage, you promise your spouse that you'll love his or her parents as your own. Before marriage, you act as though your in-laws are the best in the whole world. Your in-laws also put the best foot forward to make you feel so. But after marriage, your feelings about your in-laws take a 360-degree turn. You now find your in-laws to be calculative and self-centered. Contrary to your promise to your spouse, you're not emotionally bonded with your in-laws. In fact, after a few years of marriage, you turn hostile about them. Just after a few months of marriage, you realize that your loyalty and affection will always remain with your parents. Can you see how another marriage myth that you'll treat your in-laws as your own is also broken? The number 5 common myth that never happened in your marriage is that there'll be total transparency between you. Before marriage, you're absolutely frank with your spouse. You confide everything you plan to do with your life to your spouse. But this sort of transparency ceases to exist between you after a few years of your marriage. You hide many things from your spouse as you feel you need not tell him or her about your personal details. You hide your savings. You hide your investments. You hide about helping your parents. You buy many things secretively without your spouse knowing about it. So, the myth that there be no secrets between you and your spouse is also broken. Can you see how all sort of marriage myths are broken one by one? Your married life can never be a dreamy relationship. It will always remain a practical relationship between you and your spouse. Your marriage sometimes feel happy, sometimes boring, sometimes angry, and sometimes heavenly. So, you must realize that your impractical dreams about your marriage will never happen. Did this video make you understand how marriage myths can never really happen? Marriage realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part your relationship goal.